Hello everyone, this is just a quick phone video on how to install one of these e-bike kits onto a standard bike. Just one that I bought off of Amazon for about $578 with the battery, the front hub, and everything else. And everything that I kind of learned doing it, the pros and cons, the troubles that I had installing it, what to look out for, etc. So about 3 years ago, I bought this Co-op City 1.1 hybrid bike. Since then, I've been tooling around with it and playing with it and having fun with it. But I recently moved to a city, and in that time, I wanted to make something that was pretty easy to kind of do everything that I needed to with it. And so at first, I installed these walled bike racks. Let me see. Sorry, this video quality is not going to be that good, so let's fix that. These walled folding bags. These are really quite neat because when you fold them down, it's got the same profile as bike, but that basket is big enough to fit a standard like shopping bag. So between the two of them on either side, I can fit a full grocery load for one person, and it works out really quite well. They are really kind of a pain to install. That's the big downside, is you need like 4 hands to do it. The way that they work is that they have little clips that go onto your rack, and then just a standard nut and screw, and you have to kind of get them in the right spot, make sure that you're not kicking it with your leg when you're pedaling, and then they go on. But once you get them on, you're not going to get them off, at least not easily. But if you're fine with that, like this, like I said, is just a big now mule bike, it works out pretty well. Okay, so let's get on to the actual e-bike kit. So what do you get for $578? Well, there's a couple of different versions that you can buy. I ended up going with the front hub kit because I like the idea of having separate power for the electric versus trying to shove it all through the drivetrain. Now, if you want to go for ease of install, probably the mid-drive Bafang kit is a little bit better. You basically take the center sprocket out, you take the front shifter off, you slide the whole bottom bracket out, and then you install it, and the motor sits kind of like right here. I don't know how well that fits, what the problems are with that, so I can't really give you a comment on this. But the way that this kit works is you get a front hub, you get a whole front new wheel, and then you can swap your tire onto it like I did, and then it just goes into your front forks. Now, it is quite a pain to put this in because it can only go in one way, and then you have to balance kind of a three washer setup. So there's a washer that has a tab on it. That tab needs to fill the gap. That is basically what's keeping this thing from spinning in the fork. So it's really critical that you get that on. So it's normal washer, the tabbed washer, a tapered washer, another washer, and then the nut. And it's the same on the other side. And so far it hasn't spun. They do make little arms that give you the torque, because you remember this is giving force onto the ground, but it's also going to be putting force on the fork to move it forward. So motor goes on. It isn't too bad. I have a front brake disc, so I took that off the old wheel, getting it aligned. I had to realign the brake caliper. It's kind of a pain, but it goes on. That's probably the easiest part of this. That and installing the rack. I went for the rack battery. There's a couple of different options that you can go with. You can either go for a rack battery, or you can get for a standard battery that mounts on the down tube. As you can see, there isn't a lot of space in this frame to mount a battery if I wanted to keep the bottle cage, so I opted for the rack battery. And this rack battery is rated for 48 volts. 17.5 amp hour. It's claiming 840 watt hours. It is a pretty big battery. I don't know the actual claim if that's correct or not. Okay, moving up here, you also get new brake levers. These brake levers are your standard brake levers, except they have a little switch in them that will cut out the motor when you brake, so you're not braking and accelerating at the same time. You get to choose a different controller display. I went for kind of a basic one that is small. And then, what else is up here? Oh, and the throttle, which is really handy because this is a pedal assist sensor based one, so it's not a torque based one. So if you're on a hill and you can't turn and you're really loaded up and you can't get it spinning to have it tell you to give more power, you can hold this down and it'll just go. Okay, what's inside this box? You also get the motor controller, which is a standard motor controller and kind of a crappy housing. I would recommend that if you're going to install this housing, they're self-tapping screws. Run the screws in and out first. That will set the grooves in it and it will make it a lot easier to install. I also used this 3M super strong adhesive, so I put that down there because this was having a problem rotating, and I had to get longer screws to actually go on this kind of thicker top tube. So, and then I also used a piece of that double-sided adhesive to cinch down the controller on top. There isn't really anything to really show you on the controller because all of the connections are out here. Those are all pretty straightforward. They're color-coded. And then I just kind of clean that all up, and this is the battery one here. So you kind of just follow that. You can do that and try and get the cabling as clean as possible. And then that's pretty much about it for most of the install. My kit came with a front light, which is pretty useful. I just mounted it on the front of the fork and then angled it down so it has the right angle. And that's pretty much it there. All right, now let's talk about the problems with the kit really quick. That took a little bit of time to solve. The first one, this wasn't really an issue, but just something to keep in mind. This key that locks and unlocks the battery is the only thing that keeps the battery in. So, and you can pull the key out in either position. Normally, sometimes when you insert the key and you remove the battery, you can't remove the key. So when you lock the battery in place, make sure you tug the battery and pull the key out so that you know that the battery can't just fall out. I haven't had that happen to me because I've only ridden this a few times and I've checked it both times, but that's just something to keep in mind. This key can come out in either position, locked or unlocked, and that means that the battery could potentially be unlocked while you're trying to ride. This battery comes with a rear tail light. There's two switches back here, one to turn on the tail light and one to turn on the battery. I like that system. I like having the lights built in. Okay, and then the thing that took a while to get this bike up and running, which I really hate, and kind of makes me maybe suggest getting the whole center unit instead of getting a hubbed wheel like this, is the kit that mine came with the left pedal assist sensor. And this is supposed to work as follows. In the center of this thing, there's a ring that turns, and it's supposed to work with square tapered bottom brackets, which is fairly common, so most likely your bike has it, but if it doesn't, then you need a different sensor than this one. So that's the first thing. This is supposed to fit over the square tapered bottom bracket, and as you're pedaling, it's going to be rotating this ring. The only way that it can rotate that ring, and the only thing that secures this to the bike, and I'm sorry, my phone quality in the dark is not that great, but you can see those posts. Those posts are supposed to fit into the Shimano bottom bracket teeth here. So that doesn't really work. As you can kind of see on my bottom bracket, which is the factory bottom bracket, the taper doesn't go all the way to the end. So I can't shove this thing all the way in so that it gauges with the teeth. So this sensor never worked for me. And it's kind of junky and crappy, so I would not recommend this version. The other version I would recommend is the one that's supposed to go on the right pedal assist. So you'll see when you order these kits, there's the right pedal assist. Now that works by undoing your bottom bracket, so you'll need, sorry, these are all full of grease, that's why they're in a bag, but you'll need a Shimano bottom bracket tool or the tool that you need for whatever bike you have. There's a metal ring, and sorry, it's really hard to see it, but you undo the bottom bracket. Now, if you've never done a bottom bracket before, you undo the left side first because they thread into each other. So if you try and undo the right, you'll strip it out, and then you'll have to go buy a new bottom bracket, or at least a new bottom bracket cup. You put that on, and then there is a pass ring, which you can see there, that magnets to the crank, and then as this thing rotates around, it will sense that. Another thing, this is a 3x8 front chainring, and so there's not a lot of clearance in this. I had to get a different pass ring. Now the one that I went with was the four hole version that is a split ring. You'll see that that's like an additional $12 from somebody else. And that has just barely enough clearance to fit. I also bend the metal tab back so that there's a little bit more clearance, but now that whole system is in there, and I'm not going to mess with it until it breaks. So be fair warned, probably the most challenging part of this is installing the pass sensor. Just because you need to have some bike knowledge, you need to have the bare minimum tools. I would get a good set of Allen keys and a wrench set and the tool, obviously, to do that. So that's pretty much the hardest thing. The rest of it is just cable management. Like I said, I don't have a lot of room down here. Normally you would try and mount it here. I mounted it on the top because there's a drain hole, so if it rains, it should go down and whatever. With that all being said, this bike is pretty impressive now. I can hold down the throttle, and if I'm pedaling pretty lightly, I can maintain it going 20 miles an hour pretty much indefinitely. If you're on the flat and you let it go, it will go to 25 and it will stay there. 25 seems to be where it cuts out, even though that there's no speed limit on this thing. 25 is kind of its max, and that's pretty nice. And when you get up to a hill, I haven't tried it fully loaded yet, but you can just hold that down and it'll get you up that hill. It won't bog down. So this is supposedly the 500 watt version of the motor. Sorry, I'm just fixing something on the bike because I noticed it. And it's got written on it 250 watts. It's probably 500 watt peak, 200 watts continuous. It seems to work really well. The battery hasn't exploded yet, which is just something to keep in mind. This is a unbranded battery, so who knows what the cells in here are really like, how long it's going to last. A replacement battery is $300, so it's not really going to be the best quality thing. So I would always recommend that when you charge this thing, you charge it outside, away from the house or anything flammable, and you watch it. Like you're around, you don't go to work or whatever and you leave it charged, or leave it plugged in charging. So that's what I would recommend. I've only done 2 full charges on it so far. It seems that I probably get about 30 miles, 40 miles of range on the highest setting, and I'm pretty much fine with that. But in total, between spending pretty much $600 on the kit and parts plus another $450 on the bike when it was new, this whole setup, if you're saying that you're starting with all brand new parts, is about $1,100. If you have an existing bike, especially a hybrid bike like this one, probably the best platform to start with. Check your tire size, get the right tire size, and just go from there. They're really, really fun. And if you're using it like I am for trying to get around quickly, it's pretty good. One other thing about this bike in particular that was kind of annoying, I went for this Flesher Swiss dual leg stand. I like it because it keeps the bike centered. When you add this kit on, it does add another probably 20 pounds to the bike. So having a really good kickstand is great. I cut it down by a little bit so that the front wheel is not standing. There's notches on here that you can cut. But the way that this mounting is supposed to work is that there is a tension bar and a long screw that goes through, and it sits on top of the stays. But as you can see, even from my finger, sorry again about the quality, it interferes with the front derailleur. So that didn't work. What I ended up doing instead was buying a separate bolt. This is an M10 bolt coarse thread, and a shorter bolt, a nice large washer underneath that, and the lock washer. And I think it's fine because all your weight is on this, in my bike, is on a plate. So I don't really need to have that spreader. Plus it's only here, it's only deployed when it's stationary. So I'll keep an eye on that and see if it starts warping, but I think it's going to be strong enough that it doesn't matter and it doesn't interfere with this. This co-op, or at least this first generation co-op frame, is pretty nice. It's made by Giant, but it's always had clearance issues, which are really annoying. I tried putting a fender kit on this, and the front fender works fine because it's a standard fork, but having a fender, a full fender, clear this front derailleur and be able to wrap around is just not possible. There's not enough clearance here. I could probably bang in and make the fender more flat, but fenders are just a pain in the butt in general, so I just kind of gave up on that. What I might do instead is I might get some flat plastic sheet and build it around the center of this, or at least the battery's not getting splashed all the time. Or I might just leave it without a fender, because honestly, fenders are really annoying, and if it's going to start raining, I'm not going to be riding the bike anyway, so, you know, who cares? So that's it. That's what I would call the 10,000 foot view of what to look out for when putting these kits together. I haven't seen anybody else really talk about problems of installation with these. They seem to be either going on pretty smoothly, maybe they're using a different frame, but I just wanted to go through what took basically a couple of weeks to install, just waiting on different parts or making runs to the hardware store to get it set up like this. Okay, one last thing, because I'm in the city, I have a U-lock, but I don't have anywhere on this frame that I can very nicely mount a U-lock adapter. I was going to mount it to one of these stays and then have it kind of sit in here. I don't really like that. The kit is really designed for, or the mounting hardware for this is really designed for a thicker tube, and then unfortunately a thinner tube than the rest of the tubing on this bike. So it doesn't really work. The only thing that I'm doing for this right now